open to the awareness of your presence here now. As we allow your unconditional love to flow into us, to move through us, lifting us, transforming us. We feel your healing presence. And indeed, we celebrate. Thank you, thank you, thank you, God. And we move into the awareness that we are not apart from you, but resting within you. You are in us. We are in you. And so in that, we look upon those in our experience who seem to have a need for the awareness of your love, awareness of your presence in their lives. We hold them in consciousness and we see them transformed and lifted by that awareness. We see them soothed in their tribulation. We see them vitalized in their day-to-day. We see them enlivened. And in the awareness that you and we are not separate. We are part and parcel of this whole experience, this whole domain of consciousness. We give thanks. And for that, together we say, Amen. Do we have the new version up?
The one from 9:03 this morning is up.
Yeah, that's not the one.
Is it another one?
Yes. I texted both you and Monica that there was a new version.
Yeah, that's the one that was up when you texted it. 9:03.
Oh, okay.
I'll try one more.
Okay. So, over the course of the last several weeks, I've been talking about the work that we are to engage as we delve into the shadow. The shadow is that aspect of self that we have rejected, we have denied, we have pushed aside because we didn't feel that it was, we were afraid of it. For various reasons, we were afraid of that aspect. And in Debbie Ford's book, The Dark Side of the Light Chasers, she talks specifically about the work of the shadow, the work in the shadow. And normally we think of the shadow as being that repository of negative things, that place where we put all of the things that we don't like and shove it in there. And Ken Wilber offered us this idea, maybe. Let's see if Ken Wilber is offering us this idea. Yes, he is. Okay. So if a person or a thing in the environment informs us, we probably aren't projecting. On the other hand, if it affects us, chances are that we are a victim of our own projections. And the process of projection is that which is in our shadow. It's kind of like when you have a candle, you're in a cabin, you have a candle, you've got some kids around, and so you start to make bunny faces. You start to make silhouettes up on the wall. And it's that aspect of self that we have denied that we project onto other people. And the mechanism for that is not really known. There's speculation as to why that occurs. But the speculation is that we are trying to get in touch with that aspect of self, but we don't want to claim it as our own. Rather, we want to see it, and we project it and put it on somebody else, then we still don't have to claim it. But nonetheless, we're trying to understand that aspect of ourselves. Now that's on an unconscious level. On a conscious level, we react to those things that are in our environment, and if we are reacting to those things in our environment that are negative, that is to say we have a negative response to those things in our environment, chances are pretty good that that is an aspect of shadow that we are projecting out. On the other hand, if we see something, let's say we're walking down the street and somebody throws a piece of trash out the window of the car. And if you notice that and you go about your day, it's probably not something that reflects an aspect of shadow. If on the other hand, like me, I will react, used to be that I would react pretty aggressively. I remember one time driving up Highway 93 and somebody threw a cup out the window. And well, it turns out that I followed that person to the point where they came to a stop, and I pulled up next to him, and I said, I have your license plate number. You dropped some trash about 4 miles back there, and I would suggest that you go back and pick it up, or I'm going to turn you in. And okay, so there is that aspect of self that I reacted to, and so the question is, what is part of my shadow that I am responding to? Is it something as clear as I've been a litter bug in my past, and I don't want to acknowledge that? Is it something that is more subtle, something more symbolic? So that reaction that I had to that person throwing a cup out the window was a reflection that because it affected me, it was a reflection that it was part of my shadow. Now, I'll have to say that that has not been processed. I still have that reaction. So that was I don't know, 20 years ago or so. And just last year, we live right on the fringe of the parking area for Fairview High School up in South Boulder. And so there is a tendency for the high school students, for some high school students, to clean out their car in our neighborhood. And so I was getting ready to go. I don't know, I was going out on an errand or something, and I got in my car, and I was driving down the street, and just ahead of me there was a car, obviously 2 high school students, that had one girl actually set up on the roll-down window and threw a hamburger at a friend, apparently a friend, who was just getting out of the car. Now, if that wasn't a friend, there's some projection going on there, but it was projection of a hamburger. But that act of littering in our neighborhood was one where I followed them down to the stoplight, and I pulled up next to them, and I said, hey, there's some trash back up there. You better go get it, because now I have a picture, right? I have a... So anyway, I went about my errands, and I came back, and the trash was gone. So apparently they got the message, or somebody at least went by and picked it up. All right, so that's an aspect of shadow that I need to process. I haven't processed it yet, I'll be honest with you. I'm going to just have to deal with that at some point in the future. Hopefully I will not encounter someone who takes umbrage with my challenging them on the trash that they throw out, and they pull out a pistol and they off me because I was being arrogant or somewhat. But anyway, that's a process, that's an aspect of shadow that I still need to process. So this projection is a way to identify stuff in my shadow that I need to deal with. Debbie Ford, let's see if Debbie is up here. Oh, thank you, God. All right. I only judge people when they displayed a quality I could not accept in myself. So it's not about things that you react to, but it's people that you react to. So if we are reacting to some aspect of behavior and we consider that behavior to be negative and we judge people because of that, then that also is a reflection of something in the shadow that we need to process. Jesus said, "Judge not, lest you be judged." Well, as I used that quote last week, I remarked that I think Jesus had a handle on Jungian psychology because he's talking about this dynamic where we are, in fact, representing our shadow or we are reacting to aspects of shadow when we are judging someone. So one of the questions that I would have for you is, are you willing to look at those judgments that you make and consider that the judgments of others that you make are actually something within you that needs to be processed? Well, so there's the negative stuff in the shadow. Now, you can probably imagine that that's not all of the story, because if it were all of the story, I wouldn't have anything to talk about today, and I'd say, okay, we'll take an offering for unity now, and we'd carry on with our day. But it's not the end of the story. In 1955, there was the movement of a statue. It was a huge statue. It stood 9 feet tall. But it was a statue of the Buddha. It was a terracotta-covered statue with broken colored glass in the terracotta, and they were moving it from a from a temporary location into a new building. Now, the history of this statue is kind of interesting because in the near past, in the last 100 years or so, it had been in a temple that had fallen into disrepair, and so they tore down the temple, but they wanted to save this huge statue of Buddha in the meditating position. And so they moved it into a shelter that had a tin roof on it for some 20 years. And prior to that, when its prior home was in a temple that had been constructed in the early 1800s by the king of Thailand. I'm not sure what the country was called at that time, but by that king, he'd called upon all unused statuary of Buddha to be brought into this new capital of Bangkok. And so it was brought in from the outlying regions. And so in 1955, they were moving it into their new home. And they noticed a crack had occurred in the terracotta. So they stopped the move. They were trying to assess, how stable is it? How deep is the crack? Is this going to split wide open and we're going to have to glue it back together? One of the story of this goes that one of the monks, in assessing the damage, was out there at night, and he had a flashlight, and he was looking at the crack, and he noticed a reflection coming out of the crack. And so he chipped away a little bit of the terracotta to see what that reflection was, and lo and behold, underneath the terracotta was gold. So he chipped a little bit more away and a little bit more away, and sure enough, the gold Buddha arose from this terracotta statuary. Turns out that about 200 years prior, at that time, 200 years, it was in the 1700s, 1767. The Burmese army was invading the territory of Thailand, and the monks in this monastery apparently covered the gold Buddha with this terracotta, so that advancing army would not identify it as being, well, 5 tons of gold. So they were convincing. It turns out the army slaughtered all of the monks in the monastery, but nonetheless, the statue remained. And the statue was probably based upon the shape of the shape of the head. It was primarily, or it was thought to have originated in the 13th or 14th century. But this statue, 5 tons, actually was composed of 9 different parts. And in the terracotta that was covering the statue was a key. And I don't know what the shape of size of this key was, but it turns out that this key was the key to unlocking 9 different parts of this statue. 9 different parts that fit together very nicely, very nice flush connection. But it was designed such that it could be moved. And this key allowed the statue to be broken apart into 9 different pieces to be moved. So what's the point of this story? The point of this story is that we plaster on the terracotta on top of those aspects of self that we do not want to consider or do not want to own. We want to deny or refute those characteristics of self that at some point in time we have had a response of fear, conflict. Something has caused us to say, ooh, that part of me I want to reject. I need to set aside. So there is within us all of this negative stuff in the shadow, but there's also within us the positive stuff. Now, what positive stuff could be in the shadow? Remember that the shadow is formed as a result of fear of some sort. What are the positive things that we could be fearful of? We could be fearful of being a good singer. We could be fearful of being a speaker in front of a crowd. We could be fearful of advancing in a job so far that we are going to be severely challenged in that next position. We could be fearful of many different things, some of which are negative and some of which are positive. They actually are unlocking they're revealing to us some characteristic that is actually very positive and very powerful. But we repress it because we don't want to take responsibility for that. We don't want to accept that as a potential in us, and therefore we cover it over with this terracotta. But something comes along that reveals some aspect of the shadow. It might be something that affects us negatively, or it might be something that affects us positively, such as, let's see, I'm a Willie Nelson fan. What do I like about Willie Nelson? I love the voice, the tonality of his voice. I love the way he sings with such relaxed expression. Now, what does that mean? I have, in that admiration of Willie Nelson's singing ability, I have within me a realization that I could be a singer. Now, those of you who listen to me leading songs may contest that assertion, but it is an aspect of self that I have pushed aside because that's really scary. Standing up in front of someone and expressing ourselves, particularly when we do it solo. Being a song leader, that's fairly easy. All I have to do is just keep up with, which slide we're on. Now that is a challenge for me sometimes. But nonetheless, being a song leader is not nearly the same as being the performer. And so I admire that in Willie Nelson, but that also indicates that there is an aspect of Willie Nelson that I see in me that is a projection of my shadow of that positive thing that I have repressed. Okay? So the shadow is not always negative stuff. It can, in fact, be positive stuff. There is, Marianne Williamson offered us this. She said, our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. Your playing small does not serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. This idea that we are going to repress that aspect of self, that positive, that potential, that positive potential in ourselves, that we're going to repress that so that others around us don't feel insecure, well, that is, I think, a very real dynamic that we experience, that we don't want to stand out, right? We want to be part of the crowd. We don't want to express ourselves in such a way as to be noticed. Well, this standing out is a characteristic that can be part of the shadow that needs to be processed, it needs to be brought forth, it needs to be celebrated. There is an aspect of the gold that is within our shadow, those positive potential things that are within our shadow that can be very useful for us to identify, to celebrate, and to express. To challenge ourselves, to step out there, to get ourselves, force ourselves into situations where we are nervous, we're anxious, we feel the potential, just getting ready to rise, just getting ready to bubble up, and no, I can't do that. I'm fearful of expressing that positive thing. Well, the message here is that, like the gold in the terracotta statue, there is gold in our shadow. And gold in our shadow is a very significant resource that we can draw upon if we choose. We can draw upon if we know how. And one of the things that we can do is we can look at those things that we admire in other people, those characteristics that we admire in other people, and we can stretch ourselves to imagine that maybe there's some aspect of that in me. Maybe there's that solo singer in me. Maybe there is that person, maybe there's that integrity that I see in that person in me. Maybe, just maybe, that potential exists in me. And if it does, why not draw it forth? Why not bring it forward and celebrate that? There is within us so much that we have yet to discover. Regardless of our age, we still are a mountain of treasure. And being willing to stretch ourselves into that marginal area where we're anxious, where we're fearful, where we are, oh my God, I don't know that I can do that. Well, yeah, you won't know if you can do it until you try it. And what's the downside? That you're going to be embarrassed? Well, okay, you might be embarrassed. Or you might be in celebration. Oh, yes, I did that. I was able to accomplish that. I was able to overcome my fears and do that. How many people have heard, how many situations have you heard of where people have overcome their fear and they have become a light. They have become a celebrant of that, whatever it is that they are demonstrating. We have, each of us, within us, that gold. Let us celebrate it. Let us bring it forth. Let us look upon it and see that we are indeed the light in the world. Let us take the bushel off of our lantern and let the world see the brightness of our light. Let them see that we are truly the light of the world. You know, when we think about this, the reality of who we are, and part of my talks over the course of the last several weeks have been pointing out that it is all in consciousness. Our whole experience is in consciousness. Our experience, we think our experience is in the physical world, but it's not. Our experience is in consciousness itself. What happens in the physical world does affect us. It may or may not be appropriate for it to affect us, but nonetheless, what happens in the physical world does affect us, but our experience is in consciousness itself. And when we realize that, oh, wait a minute, the reality is that the domain in which we live is consciousness itself. And I've offered the speculation that God is consciousness itself. And that if we are part of God, then we are part of that consciousness. And if God is part of us, then there is that consciousness that infuses us. And that if it is consciousness itself, then not only are we part of God and God part of us, but we are part of each and every one else. We are connected. We are brothers and sisters in this reality of consciousness. And if we can recognize that the cosmos, all of creation, is within us as we are in all of creation, then there is, in just that realization, there is ample opportunity to celebrate. Oop, came back. Debbie Ford, in her Dark Side of the Light Chasers, offers us this. If you don't see yourself as a microcosm of the entire universe, you'll continue to live your life as a separate individual. You'll look outward instead of inward for answers and direction, make judgments about what is good and what is bad. You'll maintain the illusion that you and I are not really connected. You'll stay behind your mask in order to feel safe and secure. But if you embrace the totality of the universe within yourself, you embrace the totality of the human race. Each and every one of us is part of this consciousness that is God. We are an expression of God in this moment. Let us find the gold that's hidden in the shadow so that we can be a celebrant in this expression of the divine. It is up to us. It is merely a choice. It is only our limitation that is keeping us from it. No one else is saying, no, you can't do that. They might be saying it, but they have no power to restrict you. It is only you that is saying, oh, no, I can't do that. Allow yourself permission to say, yes, I can. We'll have our meditation. As we come into our meditation, let us come in with, I cast all my cares. As we breathe into this moment, allowing our burdens of the moment to be set aside for just these few minutes. Let us imagine what this terracotta Buddha looked like. And see that as us, with the covering of the shadow. the terracotta plastered on that gold that lies within us. Let us choose to delve into those aspects of self that we admire in others. Their skills, perhaps, or their personality, or their knowledge, perhaps their status within the community. Whatever it is that we admire, let us accept for the moment that that characteristic is in me, that I own that it is something that I can be an expression of. In this moment, let us let the gold within us be exposed, perhaps one by one, but make it a practice that those things that I admire in others are a reflection of aspects of me. We give ourselves permission to own those. Whether those are demonstrated yet or not, we own those. We accept those as part of us. One by one, we reclaim that gold that is within us, hidden in the shadow. Allowing ourselves to declare, yes, that's me, and that is me. That's part of me. I can be the expression of that. I can be that. We can declare, I am that. I am that. I am that. We give ourselves permission to own those things that we admire in others. One by one, we reveal the gold, Buddha, hidden within us. And we give thanks. And as we come back into this time and space, let us come back sharing the words of the Lord's Prayer.